Can Opentoonz help with multiple animator projects? Yes, using separate projects combined as sub-xsheets. And that's what we'll look at today. Hello and welcome to another Opentoonz tutorial. From the map projects I've seen online, they tend to share them out by a time segment, so each animator will choose a section of an audio sample to animate against, say 6 seconds, and animate it in their favourite package. Then all of the 6-second sections are simply glued together to make the 3-minute music video. Now, there could be constraints on the animation style, colour range used or characters used, but sometimes it's totally free form, which can still produce amazing results. But if you want to have a coherent story and a consistent style and are happy to use the same animation package, using sub-xsheets in Opentoonz is one way to go. I'll detail how to use sub-xsheets for your personal projects in a separate video, as they help in so many ways. But for now, just follow along and it'll all make sense. So first, as a group between you, you'd agree the story, draw up a storyboard, a script, music or sound effects, character model sheets, etc. You'd also agree the details for Opentoonz like camera size, output resolution if you're using raster graphics, Z order for drawings and any naming conventions for layers and colours, and pass these on to each person in your group. You then decide which parts each person is skilled in and split the work between these roles for each scene. For example, you might have a layout artist to work on the backgrounds and foregrounds, possibly also working on background animations like trees blowing in the wind or doors opening, but this could easily be done by somebody else. A musician, making the score or pulling together sound effects for the team to use, someone for each character in the scene, and someone for background characters, as in literally people milling in the background or birds flying across the sky or other background movements. Each person can have multiple roles of course, and the roles could change from scene to scene, but you might find that someone is particularly good at animating a specific character and would like to animate them through the whole story, but that's for your group to decide. So the first step would be for the musician to share their rough audio as either an MP3 or as an Opentoonz project to help with the timing for everyone, shared either by email or using an online sharing site like Dropbox. Then the layout artist would build the rough layout for the scene in an Opentoonz project and send that to everyone. This could include a single image painted in another program and could include some basic camera moves, which gives a rough background and timing for everyone to set their action against. Each artist would then start their own Opentoonz project and load in the background and audio draft projects as sub-xsheets. They can then work on their own portion for the animatic against these. Then they'd hide the background and audio layers, add a comment layer for the editor to write in, and send it all to the editor to compile together. The editor would then create a rough animatic project and load all of the other projects in as sub-xsheets, placing them in the right order and adding any extra camera movements and effects. The completed animatic can then be shared with the team, perhaps on YouTube as a private video or other sharing site. The editor can also add comments to each person's comments layer to help combine the different animations more fluidly, and then sends back the edited copies. This cycle continues with each contributor improving their portion of the scene, sending it back to the editor for approval, with the editor sharing the updated output with each team member. So how does this look in practice? Well, let's start Opentoonz and see. Okay, so I've started a new project. Now I'll just save the first scene, which is going to be the background. And I'll draw the background in. Okay, so there's the basics of the background. I've got 3 different layers. I've got the sky and grass layer, I've got the trees layer, and then I've got a foreground layer. And this allows us to put in some parallax motions as we scroll the camera across. So the first thing to do is place the layers in their correct Z order, which we do here using the 3D view. And you can see all 3 layers are shown on the same level together here. So all we need to do is select on each layer in turn, go to the animate tool, make sure we're on position, and if you hold control you can move the layers backwards and forwards. So the sky needs to be quite a long way back. We might later add some mountains in there or something else to show the extra depth. The trees layer is a little way back, and the rocks in the foreground are a little way forward. So what we need to do next is to go to the standard view and then adjust their size, because as you move items further to the distance they get smaller, and as you bring them forward they get larger, as you can see by the rocks here. So we need to change to the scale. Again, go to each layer in turn and adjust the scale so they fit in the rectangular camera view. So I'm simply pressing and dragging on the screen here until they look approximately the right size. So one final thing I want to do is to add in the camera move. Now the plan is to have a slow fade in. So we need to leave a gap at the beginning and then adjust the camera after a short while. And we do this using the camera column that I've talked about in previous videos, but I'll link below. So we simply need to add a key into this column, and then while on the animate tool we change the position on the final frame. So we're going to scroll across to the right, where you can see the foreground move in separately, to here, and then extend the time, and then we're going to do a slow zoom in. So again, we're on position, holding control, click and drag to the left, and the camera will slowly zoom in. Okay, let's take a look at that. Put it into the camera view. From the first frame. Okay, so it holds for a while, goes to the right, and then zooms in. And that's all far too fast, so we'll adjust these keys and see how that looks. It's not too bad, but you don't get to see the rocks so much, so I'll adjust that slightly. Okay, let's take a look at that in the camera view again. Good, okay, so we'll leave that as the initial background. Remember, it's here just as an indication to the rest of the team of where to start working on their animation. So what we need to do is to save this, which I do with Control-S, and then we'll share that with the rest of the team. Okay, so if we imagine that I'm now the character artist, and I would start a new project on my local machine, and I will call this Map Project. Okay. I will then save this scene in that project, which I will call Character 1. The first thing I would do is I would have received any audio files necessary and the background project. So I need to load the background project into my Opentoonz project, which I do using the sub-xsheet. So under File you've got Load as sub-xsheet, and that allows you to browse the project file, which is just here. And inside the Scenes folder, you see the background scene. So we'll load that, and then you get the option to import or load. Now if you import, any drawings from the external project will be copied into your local project, and so will the scene. But what you want to do is to choose load, and you'll reference it externally without moving any files. This means that if you do edit any files, you're editing in the original location, and you can zip up just the background project and send that back if necessary. So we'll click load, and you can see the background project here. If I hit play, all the drawings are imported, and you can see the animation contained in it. And that will show just as a single column. So now you can start adding your parts to this project. And because some of the camera movements are already baked into this level, you can add your drawings at exactly the right time. Okay, so at the very end here, this is where I'll add my first frame, and this will be for my first character, which I'll just put char 1. Okay, for simplicity, I'm going to just add on my character as a red circle, and I'll put in the first few basic moves so we can start to see the animatic. So you can see the first problem here is that the background only extends to frame 138, and I'm continuing my animation from that point. So all you need to do is extend frame 138, and the background will continue to show, and I can work against it then. So let's carry on. Okay, well, let's take a look at how that looks. If we go to the camera view again, we'll be able to see it clearer. So we've got the first motions from the background, and then my animation comes in for this character. So the character scrolls in, bends down, jumps up, bangs its head, and then walks away. Okay, so that's enough for the animatic. So all we need to do is to make sure we've saved it. We'll delete the background column, because no doubt we'll get a more detailed one later from the background layout artist. Okay, I'll add a new column in here, and I'll call it comments, and this is for the editor or director to add any comments to any of the frames. So we'll extend this all the way to the end. There we go. So I'll save that, and then now I would forward this to the editor. So if we take a look how I'd do that, I'd open an Explorer, I'd go to my projects folder, a map project is this one, I'd simply right click and choose send to zip file, and then this zip file I would then email to the editor or to share in Dropbox, and they can take a look at it. So let's take a look at what the editor does. Okay, so as the editor, what I'd need to do is to create myself a new project with a new scene again. So we'd name this after the actual project. Okay, save the scene straight away. So this is scene 1. And what I have to do is load all of the projects in as sub-xsheets using the load as sub-xsheet menu item. Okay, so I've loaded 3 sub-xsheets. I've got the background in the first column, then I've got the first character in the second column, and then I've got background characters, which is another project scene that I put together. And if we press play, we'll see how that looks. So you'll notice that the background ran out before the character actually came into the scene. So we need to extend the background final frame to the full length of the maximum scene, which is character 1. Okay, so we press play on that, let's see how that looks. Okay, so you can see how all 3 projects are working together. But what we can also do in the editor's project is to add further animations or effects. So for instance, if we'd like a fading at the very beginning of the scene, so what we'll do is I'll add a new vector level. To fade in over. And what I'll paint on that level is a black rectangle. Yep. And I'll fade that out over the first few frames. So I'll add an effect onto here. Image blending, transparency. I'll remove the direct connection to the X sheet, so it only goes through the transparency. I'll put that in front of everything. If we put the preview window on, we can see how that looks. So in the first frame we'll add a key of 0 transparency. In the last frame we'll add a key of 100% transparent. So that across the first few frames we see the fade in. If we take a look at how that looks. Okay, good. So you see the fade in, the background birds, the camera movement from the background level, and the character movements. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you'd ask all of your contributors to add a comments column to their project, and this allows the editor to provide any feedback about how each of the projects interact with each other. So to get to the column, you just select on the column and then choose to go into the sub-xsheet by pressing this button. So here you can see the project in isolation from the other projects, and you can watch the animation, which comes in quite late. There we go. And then at any point necessary, you can add comments into the comments column. So we'll add a comment here just to offer some advice about the squash. Obviously you'd write a fuller description to the person involved. So this allows you to give more visual feedback than just writing an email to somebody. And because it's on a separate column, you're not interfering with the actual drawings. So we could actually draw in front of the image if we wanted to. And because it's in a separate column, this can just be hidden or erased later by the character animator. And then if you want to see the animation again, you can just hide this column from the view. So to get back to the main animation, we press the button here to leave the xsheet, and now we're back onto the main project. So there's one final thing to cover, and that's the Z order, which is the ability to place one level in front of or behind another. Now if you remember, the background is made up of 3 levels, so that when it moves, you can see some parallax between the different levels. However, if you look at the 3D view of the background against the characters, you'll notice that the background is shown all on one level. Which is the same level as the characters are. So we'll come down to where the main character comes in. You can see they're all on the same level there. However, if we step inside the sub-xsheet for the background, again by pressing the into sub-xsheet button, you can see that the 3 levels of the background are still showing at different planes on the Z-axis. But when you import them as a sub-xsheet as a single column, they all appear in one position. I can move them backwards and forwards as a single level, but I can't individually change them. So for instance, if we wanted this character to walk behind the rocks but in front of the trees, we couldn't do that. So what we'd need is have 2 or 3 separate levels given to us from the layout artist. So let's take a look at that now. Okay, so I've loaded the background project, and all we need to do is to remove the camera layer and the camera movements, and then to save the 3 different levels as 3 different projects. So let's do that. So simply delete the camera level, and the camera then will be parented straight to the table without going through the column first. And then what we do is we just simply hide all but one of the levels, and then save the scene under a new name. So the original is called background, so we'll call this background 1. Okay, then we'll bring in the trees level, save this as background 2, bring in the rocks level and save this one as background 3. So if we go back to the editor's project, and we'll remove this one background, and then load the 3 separate backgrounds as sub-xsheets. Okay, so let's just rearrange the levels. So the first one is the character level, which goes in front of the trees but behind the rock. Then there's the background character level, which goes in front of the sky but behind the tree. And then the fade in level to go at the very front. So if we take a little look at that, we'll see the background stays still, and then the character still comes into view. Now the backgrounds all expire early, as we saw before, so we need to extend these to the end of the project. So let's place each level in 3D space. So on frame 1, we'll choose the sky, make sure we're on position for the animate tool, move that one backwards. The birds want to go backwards slightly as well. The trees will go a little bit back. And the rocks will come forwards. And the character can stay where it is. Okay, so now let's add a new level to control the camera. Okay, so let's add some camera movements in here. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So you can see the background characters, the scrolling happens with a little parallax, zoom in, the main character comes in, does his action and moves out. Now I can't quite see the depth there, so let's just change things slightly. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Okay, that's pretty good for an animatic, and then what the editor would do would be to give some feedback to each of the animators, and they continue to refine their animation, submitting their project to the editor periodically, perhaps when they've drawn some keyframes, or when they've done some breakdown poses, or all of their in-betweens before final colouring, and then the final version, with the editor combining all of the projects so that people can see the progress of the other animators. So although it takes a little bit of planning, it is one possible way to use Opentoonz to work collaboratively on a large project. Each person working in a separate project and then combining them afterwards using sub-xsheets. That's all for today, and I'll be back soon with more tutorials each Friday, and that's a guarantee.